Working with documents day in, day out, especially with documents that contain different languages, or working with accessibility tools for individuals with disabilities. You want to be able to make sure that you utilize certain best practices, right, that you follow when you create documents in Word 2013. Because really, you like to create a document that is accessible by everyone, that is readable by anyone. So you want to be able to create certain documents that keeping all these things in mind. Let me give you tips on best practices that you can use while you create your documents. For instance, you would like to use styles within your document. So whenever you apply headings and paragraph styles, they serve not only to format a document consistently, but they actually, in fact, they define the actual structure of the document itself and the organization also. So users working with lengthy documents by using the screen reader generally rely on occurrence of section headings to keep track of their places in documents. So you want to be able to keep your headings in a hierarchical order, right? So you're not skipping levels, you're not missing any heading text, so consistency remains. Second, you want to keep your headings short. Okay, in general, we work with headings should be no longer than one line. You want to be able to be very concise, right? So that's a tip that you want to keep that in mind while creating your documents. Then you want to make sure that your hyperlinks are clear. So for example, if you're inserting hyperlinks in Word within your document, you have the option to either show them as, the blue color that you see and it's underlined, or you can have it clear. So instead of inserting a links URL, you can enter display text in the insert hyperlink dialog box. Okay, so that basically the purpose is, the objective is that the destination or purpose of a link is clearly described. You want to be able to avoid using nested tables or merged or split cells into a table. Okay, keep them very simple, keep them to the point so that the point actually comes across to the other reader. So whoever is going to look at the table and the person is going to edit the table, for example. So try avoiding blank cells. So all these tips are handy when you're working with within your document. You also want to avoid using blank characters or repeated blank characters. Sometimes screen readers, they don't really interpret extra spaces or tabs or empty paragraphs as blanks. So you like to avoid those things. Okay? Try also avoiding any floating objects. So the objects that are not in line with text are more difficult to navigate, and they might be inaccessible to users with vision impairment, for example. Okay, so you want to make sure that you try to avoid using floating objects. The other option is you set the text wrapping around the objects, so top and bottom and inline text. That makes it a little easier and relate the image to the text. Watermarks, okay, you can use them depending upon the requirement, but keep this in mind that people with vision or cognitive disabilities might not understand an image, okay, that is used as a watermark. So what you can do is, if you insert a watermark in a document, for example, and the watermark says draft, add the same info to another area of your document, so the reader knows that, hey, this is a draft document. Okay, so just do not simply rely on the watermark itself. Let's see what else. You can also work with, it's a good idea to insert audio components perhaps in your documents. You want to make sure that people can also hear what you have to say, but be sure that the content is available in alternative formats, right, such as closed captions, transcripts, or alt text. And I'll demonstrate next how to use some of the practices as well. Here is my sample document, same document that we've been working with in previous tutorials. This is again a research paper. I'm going to show you, demonstrate how to work with and take a look at some of the accessibility options and whatever best practices that I've just elaborated. Let's see them in action. So let's go to File. The accessibility options are found under File in your Backstage view. Notice where it says Inspect Document, and within the Check for Issues box, you will see the Check Accessibility. So they check the document for content that people with disabilities might find difficult to read. So this is a good practice when you're working with these documents, okay, to make sure that you want to be able to check your accessibility. So let's do this with this document. So once I click on the accessibility checker, comes up and it tells me, expand that so you can see. All right, so it shows me my inspection results, okay? And it gives me some warnings. For example, it says, well, geez, I'm using infrequent headings, okay? What are those? Let's take a look. So once I highlight the heading, it takes me directly to the area that Word thinks that I'm using infrequently, okay? So for example, I'm using a tab after every heading. The Word thinks this may not be required. Well, it's up to you. If your requirement is to have a tab, that's fine. Otherwise, you can backspace it, okay? Same thing. You click on the next warning message and Word says, well, geez, you have another one. So I'm going to remove this. Okay. So forth. So let's move forward. Let's go to hyperlink. Another warning message is hyperlink. So unclear hyperlink text. Okay, let's see what that is. This relates to one of the citations and Word automatically highlights this for me and tells me that, hey, I don't get this, right? The Word doesn't get this. So you need to make sure that you cite this correctly, for example, or you want to be able to make sure that it's written properly. Same with all these texts that Word thinks it's unclear to it. Repeated blank characters. Word finds after inspecting the document that here are 4 characters down here. This area is blank. And it says there's 4 characters. So if I delete this, Word automatically removes it from here as well. Same thing with here. Okay. Once I click on table, Word says tables used for layout should present info in a meaningful order way. Verify the table reading order by through cells and ensuring that the flow is from one to the next cell. Another thing I want to show you is the alt text shows up when someone selects a certain table. So if I double click or right click, go to my format or go to my table properties, notice text. Okay, so this is my title. Okay, so the alt text are simply titles and descriptions that provide text-based representations of information in tables, diagrams, or images, things that you want to explain to the user. So a title can be read to a person with a disability and is used to determine whether they wish to hear the description of the content or not. So again, making sure that your document is accessible to individuals with disabilities. Okay. So once I'm done, I can close it. So this is a good way to check the accessibility of your documents when you're working with them. Check the accessibility, make sure your document is available to a wide audience. Let's take a short quiz.